that name. So we had an instant following, you know. And here's me and him sitting in the bedroom with like 2 songs. Like
2 songs and an instant following.
It was like a blag, you know, it was like a real blag, but sorted it out. We got a record deal and everything together out of it.
You had a record deal on 2 songs?
Yeah, we had a record deal on like no songs.
No songs. We were a bit smart in a way, I think, in retrospect, because a lot of that scene that was happening in England at the time kind of ground to nothing. And we figured that, well, once we'd got the band together, we'd best get it off the ground rather quickly before the whole thing sort of ran out of steam, which it did. I mean, if you look back to the amount of bands that were up and coming and getting deals at that point, there's very few left that are actually out now, like The Mission and Andrew Eldritch, which is Sisters of Mercy. Other than that, I don't seem to see anybody else around. There's nobody left.
Gone through a number of transformations. The name changed twice, and your image has changed over the last few years. I mean, even the look of the band.
Yeah,
is
there's 2 years
different.
in between those records. You know, 2 years is a long time. See, first time I was coming to Australia. You know, people don't really realise the band's been going that long. It wasn't like an overnight thing. You know, it was always if you look at the Love album, for example, there's 2 tracks in there that stand out, like Love and the Phoenix. I think we kind of. It showed which direction the band was going to go in. They were like, you know, blatantly rock tracks, you know.
So the band was sort of still feeling its direction at that stage?
We were just like focusing our energies and learning about ourselves, you know. Developing, the character was coming out, and playing styles, singing styles. Songwriting was getting much better, you know. It wasn't like shrouded in mystery and multi-layered guitar kind of thing.
We just had our first hit as well. I don't know whether people know, I mean, what actually happened was Sanctuary came out as a single in England in sort of spring of '85, and that was a hit, and that was the first record we'd had that had actually got in the big chart, as opposed to like the independent charts. So going in to do the Love album, it was basically everybody around the band just was saying, well, whatever you're doing, just do more of it, because you're doing something right. And it was, I mean, literally we started recording the record and we had to go and do Top of the Pops, and it was all very thrilling and exciting, so there wasn't any, like, worrying about things. There was nothing to worry about. It was all a very positive thing, so with the record, we just did what we liked. Anything that we wanted to put on it, there was no, I don't know, constraints, there was no worries about, no worries. There was no, like with the Electric album, once you've had success with a certain kind of music, people always start going, oh, they've changed, oh, they don't sound like what they used to, they're terrible. With the Love album, we didn't have to sound like anything. We could do whatever we wanted, and that was the result. And also, it was only the second album we'd ever made. I mean, neither of us had ever been involved in making an album other than the Dreamtime album, which was the first proper album the Cult did.
Or any other kind of like proper recording, really. Because the producers we worked with in the past were just like sort of Joe Bloggs, you know, sort of a part-time producer. We had one guy that we worked with for the Dreamtime album, a guy called Joe Julian, who we did Spirit Walker, and he recorded it and mixed it within like sort of 10 hours. In fact, he mixed it within an hour and he said, I'm off home for me dinner. Yeah. That was the kind of vibe, you know. It was kind of weird. And then Steve Brown was the first proper professional producer we ever got involved with. So we were a bit wogged out, because he was a very sort of state-of-the-art producer. He was really into using all the effects and multi-layering things and creating, like, he just had this vision of like kind of a really deep, heavy sound, you know, multi-textured sound. And we kind of went, oh, this sounds good, you know, because it sounded professional for a change. So in between the period between Love and the Electric album, we basically realised what the strengths were of the band. We just decided we wanted to strip down the whole thing, just get to the meat of the matter. You know, I think the next album will probably be a cross between Love and the Electric album. We'll have the best of both worlds, you know.
Right. Well, the producer of the Electric album was Rick Rubin, who's best known for his work with the Def Jam artists. Why did you choose him?
Well, when you consider Rick Rubin, you know, as being associated with the rap artist, what really put Beastie Boys and Run DMC onto the world scene was the fact that he mixed it with rock music. And that's Rick's main bag was rock music, and that's why we got involved with him, because he's really got a good ear for guitars. He really likes his guitars a lot, and also he's got, you know, like similar bands to us, has long hair and a beard, and he's just like a blue cheer AC/DC freak. So it's kind of exciting to work with him. There's not one mention of James Brown or anybody like that during that session, you know.
Yeah, it was cool. And he also wasn't like your... a lot of producers we encounter are terribly scared of record companies. They seem to, you know, they're so worried about budgets and keeping happy because they have to work. You know, once they've finished an album with one artist, they like to think they'll get work from the company again. And the Electric album we actually recorded twice, which is fairly well documented. I mean, there's no point in going into the story. Suffice it to say, we'd spent a lot of money and done it once, and Rick really was only supposed to do a remix and record just 2 tracks. And between us, we all just decided that the only way to make the record sound how we wanted it was to re-record it. And I don't think a lot of producers would have had the guts to do that. They would have been too scared. But considering he owns his own, like, multi-million-dollar company, which is what Def Jam is now, it didn't really bother him too much.
A number of the Def Jam bands, such as the Beastie Boys and Run DMC, often use things that, guitar riffs or whatever, that sound like they come directly from Aerosmith or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin.
They do, they come off the records.
And they get sampled or whatever. Yeah. Right.
They sample them. I like that, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Bit of piracy.
It's kind of neat when they do live shows, that what they do is they get a special record pressed up just purely for scratching and dubbing in to get all the effects put on a record. It's kind of interesting, that.
And they just sing over the top. So.
The thing is, of course, the cult's often been accused also of ripping off a lot of the rock bands, or some of the rock bands of the late 60s, early 70s.
We've ripped off everyone. We really have.
Seriously, though, what's your reaction to that?
To make rock records, our standpoint on rock music at the moment is that a lot of people make really AOR corporate rock records. They make them to get played on the radio. They don't make them, I think, with like a real intent to make good music. I think the corporate mentality creeps in and they just want to get stuff played on the radio, and I think that's kind of worrying. It's like that it just propagates the thing where established artists get played all the time and new bands don't really get a chance. I mean, it's just a typical American thing of selling baked beans over the radio. You know, it's like they'll play what they think their listeners want to hear, and then they can sell them Oldsmobiles. And we just didn't want to do a record that was like that. I don't know, it was just a point. We felt that a lot of bands from a period of time that had been slagged off so badly in England, i.e. the late 60s, early 70s, we just felt that a lot of those bands did something right. I mean, rock music didn't exist particularly till like sort of 1967, wasn't it, that year, the wonderful year, man, when I was in short pants and eating ice cream. It seemed that before everything was rock then, and then suddenly it went into categories of acid rock, heavy metal, folk, blues, and they kind of went off in tangents, and it became a tad cliche. But I think like there was a couple of really great albums made in the early 70s in terms of blues rock, and we just wanted to not recreate it, but just learn from, you know, a way of doing things that seems to have been lost, an art that's lost, of like...
It's kind of more traditional and natural. You know, blues-based rock music is the ultimately natural form of rock, I think white rock music, you know, white music anyway. Artists these days have been influenced by one way or another by blues-based rock from the 70s. You know, people like Prince, for example. If it wasn't for people like Hendrix, etc., etc., Prince wouldn't even exist, you know. So it's very traditional things, what we've been brought up with, it's what's influenced us. And I don't think we have our own sound, our own character, our own identity. You know, I don't sound like Robert Plant, I don't sound like anybody else. You know, I've got a very distinctive voice, but he's got a very distinctive guitar sound as well. You know, those are things we've developed over, like, since we've been playing and singing and stuff. So we go, boo-ha, we blow your nose at those.
In
Well,
the general
obviously-
direction.
Yeah, well, obviously everybody is influenced by what's gone before.
Of course, I
and
think
the
it's cool,
records
you
they
know.
listen to.
It's like when the Beatles first came out, people were going, you just sound like Buddy Holly, the Everly Brothers. We're not really interested. You know, we want the American thing. When the Beatles were like pushing around, trying to get record deals and stuff, people were going, we don't want this, we want American stuff. We want the original
But
stuff.
I think perhaps why the criticism of the cult has been so consistent, apart from that general nastiness of the British music press anyway, but there are certain guitarists on certain cult songs that
Blues
sound...
music's very traditional.
But, yeah, I mean,
You know,
like the
there's no
opening
point-
of Wildflowers,
point-
like AC/DC.
Yeah, but there's no
opening.
point. I mean, some things occur naturally, you know. There's natural chords there, which sequences which sound good, which people will use. You probably hear those chord sequences on like about, I don't know, quite a lot of rock records anyway. They're the best sounding chords. You get the best power out of them, you know. Put the best melodies to them.
So concerned and interested in being modern and original, and what they tend to forget ultimately is like the quality of the songs. That was the whole problem with the positive punk scene in England, that people were so into being original and dropping names of bizarre German art movements that really they forgot about writing songs, and ultimately all those people are on unemployment now. And I think that, you know, I defend our... We're actually a bit too soft on people that say we sound like stuff, because there's thousands of bands that rip people off, like Simply
Blatantly.
Red, blatantly. What's so original about Sade? It's just people don't know the forms of music that they're influenced by, because we're never as popular as Led Zeppelin, who are probably the biggest band in the world. So when you get a band that in any way do rock stuff, easy, everybody knows about Led Zeppelin. Everybody grew up listening to Led Zeppelin. And particularly people in the media, and I think they're a little bit embarrassed about it. You know,
That's the thing that's happening in Britain. I think we were the first young band in England to come out and say, this is what we're into. These are our influences. We don't like Bauhaus. We don't like weird music. You know, we like really natural, powerful, energetic music. This is what we're into. And everyone just kind of shot us down in flames. 6 months later, as soon as we started working with Rick Rubin, Def Jam thing, everyone were like, okay, we can dig this.
They call it cool
Because
now.
Def Jam are cool, so it must be cool. Then you've got like all these rock bands coming out of England now, and everyone's growing their hair. You know.
Joe, and then the thing about Rick Rubin, he didn't care. Rick Rubin doesn't care. He just cares about good, and people who've got guts and people who've got a bit of talent. He doesn't really care about whether or not it's the most strikingly original noise ever to come out. It's not really relevant. I think what matters is how good the songs are, how good you are at doing it. And I think one of the things about the Cult is we're good at it. We're good at being a rock band. There's a lot of terrible rock bands out there. We've actually got a bit of quality and a bit of a natural talent. You know.
I found at one point when I first started that I really wanted to sound like people like Joplin. I really wanted to sound like Janis Joplin, just to push it so hard to try and sound like her. But I was really unhappy with my own voice, you know.
In their heyday, we're talking about, 60s, come 70s, late 60s,
We're also
early
talking about the
70s.
cream of music.
How old
know,
were you?
we're talking about
How
like-
old were you? What were you doing at...
We were little.
In their
we were
heyday.
toddlers.
So when did you discover...
It was after
that
punk
music?
rock, because what happened was punk rock just blew everything apart. The fragments were just, they could never be put back together again, the music scene. It's never ever going to be the same again. But when it died, I was going out to clubs in Liverpool and I was starting to listen to things like, I don't know, for some reason people were playing the Doors. I think people were just like really bored with what was happening around that time. Nobody wanted to listen to Joy Division. Nobody wanted to listen to Killing Joke. It was just so dire and gloomy, you know. Everyone was trying to like rediscover the past. I think everyone actually asked the same question, what happened before 1976? You know, bands like Yes and
But
etc.
art rock
etc.
bands.
Yeah, progressive rock bands, you know, sort of like sixth form visions of, I don't know, people living on tops of mountains with dragons.
Concept
coming along. And that was it, you know. I'd start hanging out at this place and listening to this kind of music. It was like blues-based rock music. It was really exciting, I think, because it was new to me. It was fresh. When I heard Hendrix doing Purple Haze, I thought, this is incredible. You
So
know.
tell me, what records are you listening to these days?
All that stuff. No, I guess a few things come along now and again, you know. I've always bought every new Prince album. And he's never let me down in any of his records, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And new Aerosmith album I think's really good. Guns N' Roses, I like them a lot.
Billy, what about you?
Trying to think of a new record that come out that I actually
The
like.
Whitesnake album was, we played that to death, and then we just realised that there was only one good song in it, you know?
Yeah, I love albums. Like, I like the Whitesnake album for a while, and I like the new Motley Crue for a while. And then they don't seem to have the longevity of certain records that I own, so I tend to go back to stuff like, I don't know, the Free Story I usually listen to.
What happened to Motorhead coming back at the moment? We think Motorhead are coming back.
Great.
Listen to a lot of Motorhead.
Look forward to that. Right, well, Billy and Ian, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Die Parallele zwischen Hippies und Hardrockern. Lange Haare. Ein Kult sind sie ohnehin. Hier sind The Cult.